everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Slumber Party podcast. My name is Amanda Jewson. I'm here today with my co-host, best friend, and life partner, Liza Ramnarine. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
And it is a life partner situation.
It really
Like
is.
we have several packs. Lisa, this is not a big deal, but there is like a whole thing going on behind you. Do you see it?
Yeah,
Like,
it's my
yeah,
neighbors
I love it.
doing some
I
yard work.
It's like I saw it was like do. And when I say do, that doesn't really translate for a podcast, but uh it's just like legs walking and then now
Yeah.
there's bending.
My closet is in this
Yeah,
door and my bathroom's over there. So I was getting dressed when I realized
no,
these people
no.
are,
You're
but
like
it's low enough. They can't really see unless they literally lay down on the ground and look in. So hopefully they
100%.
won't be
And
doing
they're
that.
not doing that. I mean, yeah, well, maybe they will after listening to this episode.
Yeah. And if you want to see what we're talking about, jump onto YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. It is your choice that you're not seeing this.
Yeah. There's a lot
I'm
to
not
see.
I know I shouldn't admit this, but I don't think it's a big deal. I I don't watch YouTube, but I make content for YouTube because I know that there's a whole people who only YouTube and they don't podcast, and
Yeah.
I podcast. So I I like the idea, and like sometimes I'll watch a YouTube, but it's really never. I think this is where I'm showing my age. It's never really like got to me. Like
Yeah.
TikTok, I get, but a long form video, I just can't.
I know when people talk about being YouTube obsessed or like watching their shows or watching creators on YouTube, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing. It must be our
Oh,
generational thing that
I think it
it
is.
wasn't. Yeah,
I think it
YouTube was
totally
just
is.
coming in right at the end, like becoming real big right at the end of university, right? And I feel like they got to
Exactly.
catch you during your formative years. I do follow
I,
a couple of creators though on
yeah.
Instagram, and if they post something that they've posted
Yeah,
something, then I will log in just for them.
exactly.
Yeah.
My like virtual assistant Kate, who I've worked with for like most of this business now, like I want to say 5 years, 4 years at least. She was the person who was like, "Hey, like great for your podcast." She's younger. She's like, I don't know, like how old is she? 10 years, 15 years younger than me. I don't know how old because
Mhm.
I don't
So
ask her
she's
every day.
10.
But, pardon?
She's 10.
She's not 10, but she is. She's hip and cool and in the know, and she just got married and just,
Mhm.
living her life. And she's like, "Maybe you should think about, recording your podcast for YouTube." And I was like, "Thanks, Kate. That's why you exist." She's lovely. She keeps me young.
She does, yeah.
Um, okay, everyone. Today we had a question. I'm going to read the question. Um, real quick here. And I liked this question, and I actually searched the pod to make sure that we haven't already talked about it, but we haven't, which is awesome. Okay, so oh no, that's not the question. Nope, that's not the
This is a
question
good pod.
either. Sorry. It's the worst when someone pretends. Here we go. I got it. When someone is looking for something while someone else is on camera. I like this happens to me all the time because I'm often presenting something and I'm like, just wait a
Mhm.
second, or like something comes up. It gives me so much anxiety the time passing while everyone is watching me. And I
Totally.
also as a viewer or an experiencer of that, I hate that. I'm like, just get it. But I thought I
Yeah.
had it. It was just the wrong question. Okay. Our anonymous question today is: my 7-month-old will not go to sleep for the night before 8:39. I tried everything. If she does, she either treats it as a nap or wakes up wide awake at 3 a.m. However, she still wakes frequently after 1 a.m. each night. Any suggestions? I have so many layers for this question. There are layers here, as you can tell.
Mhm.
But it really did inspire me to talk about bedtimes because uh, I don't think bedtime is talked about enough, or I guess the complications, the wrong word, the understanding of it is, so if you go online, it's like early bedtimes for kids. That's like standard advice. So I think that when people see this podcast episode title, they're going to think that's what I'm going to say to them today. Put your baby to bed early. I'm not going to say that because I think it's actually so much more complicated than that. Before I start ranting, Lisa, what time do your kids go to bed? How did you I would love for take us through the years, okay?
Mhm.
Cuz you're the after, okay? You have
Yeah.
teenagers now with changing voices and I cannot handle it. But anyway, take
Did I
us.
tell you how I heard my husband speaking upstairs? And then I look and my
No.
husband's right beside me and it's my son. And I was like, wow, that really takes some adjusting to like, I 100% thought it was Clayton upstairs. And then I look over and Clayton's standing right beside me. Yeah, we're there.
I think we have to
It is
shut
the
this
biggest
episode
trip
down.
of my
I need
life.
therapy.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
So talk us I
yes.
just want to know like what your kids have done. Has it transitioned? Talk to me about that. Are they different?
So yeah, for sure. I mean, and again, it's like, I think you say this a lot in terms of like what's best for the family and what's best for everybody's like flow.
Mhm.
And a- as the standard is like my kids used to go to bed early, right? Because
Mhm.
my oldest son was such an early riser, so they used to go
Mhm.
to bed really, like 7:30, which was just such paradise.
Love it.
That was when the living was good. Um, and so you have all this time in the evenings, but when my third child came around, because of the like a bit of a jump between, or like a bit of a break there that we took between the two boys and the third, we did start to have her bedtime much later than like the boys used to have when they were little, and that
Mhm.
just created like less stress around
Mhm.
bedtime and less,
Yeah.
you know, fights with the boys when they eventually, had to stay up later than my little baby. So anyways, um now our routine is that my daughter goes to bed, like everybody showers and my daughter
Mhm.
goes to bed around 8 o'clock,
Mhm.
which isn't ideal for schedules for her because she does end up sleeping in late in the mornings. And when we're not in school, obviously, it works out
The
so well and
dream.
it's great. And in the summer, she does end up going to bed a little bit later, but then, yeah, she stays up or she stays sleeping so much longer. But yeah, our routines are they just had to adjust
Mhm.
to what our life was like,
Yep.
what our activities are like. If she falls asleep generally on the way to somewhere, then it just made sense to push her bedtime to later.
Yeah.
So that's our philosophy: is once we figure out something is really not working, something is
Yeah.
feeling like there's a lot of stress around it, then we just
Yes.
adjust and we all kind of
Yes.
discuss it and
Yeah.
agree on a plan. And it really is all about like what works best for the family and for our little
Totally.
community here. Yeah.
I really love that in a lot of ways. And, I remember doing my training, and I think that, this advice about early bedtime started, it does come from a good place because I think that, sorry, I'm going everywhere. I'm remembering reading Dr. Ferber's book. I believe it's like, oh God, what's it called? Oh, it's on my shelf behind me. It is. Yeah, solve your child sleep problems.
Hmm.
I mean, he didn't know it ahead of his time. Like, that's a great SEO name for search. Solve your child sleep problems. Wouldn't mind if I do. Um, I remember there's a passage in there that stuck with me. about how to help your child sleep better at night. And he talks about having a whole bunch of patients come in and they all had late bedtimes or they were going to bed with their parents. And I think that comes from a place of, maybe not understanding children's circadian rhythms. So the children were genuinely overtired. They were doing things that weren't aligned with their circadian rhythm. And here's the most important part, there were sleep problems. Okay. There were sleep problems already. It's not, this is the thing that I tell people all the time, that I am not looking to change things for you if there are no problems. So,
Mhm.
your youngest is such a great example of, like, on paper, I think Charlotte goes to bed sometimes later than my kids,
For
but
sure.
also it doesn't matter because she's getting adequate sleep and she is rested and she's developing and there are no problems. So
Yeah.
that is the starting point for me always. Is there a problem? Okay, so if the answer is no, then the flow chart that we have, you just stop using it and you say, enjoy your life. And then you go and make yourself a tea. But if there are problems, then we can look at bedtimes. So in general, you will hear the stock standard advice, early bedtime, early bedtime, early bedtime. Early bedtime, just saying that's subjective, right? What's early for
Mhm.
me might be not early for you. I've heard of bedtimes. Oh my God. This is crazy. Um, I mean, I'm passing a judgment. Sorry, it's not crazy. But my daughter, so when we lived in Toronto, we had a caregiver who lived with us for 4 years. She was, we still talk to her. I love her so much. I love her. Every time I talk about her, I get emotional because she was just my like right hand woman. I'm
Yep.
getting emotional.
Oh,
Anyway,
you miss her.
um, anyway, so she was telling me we were talking about like whether or not Nora should be on one nap, and then she was saying, what do I do about one of Nora's friends? And I was like, well, tell me. And apparently they put their baby to bed at 4:30 in the afternoon for the night, and the baby would get up at like 3:30 in the morning. They had like a
Oh.
totally, totally, yeah. So, like, that's an early bedtime. That's an early bedtime.
Mhm.
I would argue that's too early. But generally when you're hearing your doctor say or you're hearing, me say an early bedtime, we're talking anywhere between 6:30 and 8 o'clock PM. Now, what we do know is that children in general tend to have earlier circadian rhythms. That means they wake earlier in the day, anywhere between 5 and 7 a.m., and they go to bed earlier, generally between that 6:38. If you're falling within those ranges and you're happy and there's no issues, then there's no issues. There's really no need to make an adjustment.
Right.
The concerns come from concerns. If you are, let's say, pushing your baby to a late bedtime, later than 8 o'clock, because you want them to sleep in, or you want their schedule to change, that may not happen. Okay. I hear all the time, I would love for my kid to go to bed late and wake up late. And I always say, I would also love that. And
Right.
my daughter, and likely your son, my oldest and your oldest, that just would never work. We would aggressively try to put her down later in the hopes that a later waking would occur. Never, never, never,
Yes.
never.
Yes.
Still on the weekend, we have screen-free weeks, and we allow weekend screens. And on the weekend, my daughter is like ding, 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 and we'll have later nights because we'll go out for dinner, we'll see family friends, and we'll have later nights. Doesn't matter. She's up, ready to go. Let's do this. Um, so that doesn't work because that's not where her natural body clock is. That's not where her circadian rhythm is. Now, circadian rhythms do shift over time and with age. We know that with teens. You're
Yes.
probably seeing
Yep.
this right now
Definitely.
with age, that they naturally want to go to bed late and wake up late. Now, this stresses a lot of parents out. Are you in that stage right now, Lisa?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Mhm.
I feel like as soon as we noticed, um, like his puberty kicking in, you really started to notice the late bedtime, or
Yeah.
not. Obviously, he did have a later bedtime, but really sleeping in. Like on the
Yeah.
weekends, he'll wake up at 9, and it's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's like, and he's genuinely sleeping. He's not just
Yeah.
messing around in his room or whatever. Yeah, so definitely noticing that, and that's a big adjustment from a kid who used to wake up at 5:30, 4:30
Totally.
sometimes.
And I think about, when we think about, if we know this about teenagers, it's why there's a huge push for schools to start later, because kids are being forced to learn at times they should be sleeping. Um, but anyway, if we know that and we accept this about teens, and I think this is a pretty well known fact now, we have to understand the same exists for babies and children. Then they
Mhm,
skew earlier. Then, I want to say around like 20, after 21 years old, roughly, we tend to re regulate back to whatever our chronotype is. So, are we a late riser? Are we an early riser? Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. I'm back. Um,
nice.
Thank you. If we have our early late risers, that's really biologically predetermined.
Mhm,
So, that's a general like advice about bedtimes. Now I want to talk about some of the I want to say 5% of the cases that we have that are truly doing their own thing. So I have babies who go to bed late and wake up late. That happens all the time. And what we do is when we're doing our intake with our client, we will often ask, what time is bedtime? And we start with that bedtime. So
mhm,
that's for two reasons. Number one, if the baby is doing well there, we don't want to change it. Okay. And if that's their natural circadian rhythm, who are we to be like, you have to go to bed at 6:30 because this book said it? Like, that's not how life goes. The other thing, and I want to be so, this is like an aha moment I learned the hard way with clients. And so I'm sharing it with everyone. Write this down. If your baby goes to bed, so if I'm looking at my client here who says, I cannot get my baby to bed no matter what, whatsoever before this. So 8:39, that is
mhm,
where your baby's circadian rhythm has been trained to go to bed. Why that's important is if the body is ready to go to bed, there are biological functions and processes that are happening to aid that. That means we are the melatonin needs to produce at a certain time. So if you want your baby to go to bed at 7, their body isn't like shooting it like it's not this like crude, but your body's not like giving the hormones it needs to go to sleep at 6. So
mhm,
if I wanted to go and put myself to bed right now, I couldn't fall asleep. And I am 40 years old and I would just get up and move. But if you put a baby down who's really not tired enough, their body isn't doing all the things, they will not fall asleep and they're going to scream and cry. And then there's instances where they will treat it like a nap because their body just isn't ready to do it. So I would say don't force something that isn't happening. Okay. If you are
mhm,
starting sleep training on your own or you're looking to implement a schedule, people ask me all the time, what's a schedule? Give me a schedule. Can I have a sample schedule? No, because I don't know anything about your baby. And that's not helpful because I give you that schedule. When your baby doesn't do that, you're going to panic and there's nothing wrong with your baby. So, um, there's that part. And I think that that's really important information because I say I learned this a hard way is I remember this client like they're serious, like you have experiences with people. It's like
yeah.
you might not ever remember me, but I'll never forget you. But this baby was going to bed so late. So the baby was going to bed at midnight and waking up the next day around 12. And I was a cocky new sleep consultant. I was like, yeah, let's just bring it down to 8. this was such a disaster. This baby cried and cried and cried and cried off and on, maybe would nap 30 minutes up until 12 every day for like a week. And in the end, what we started, we paused with the client, we came back and we started doing sleep work at the baby's bedtime. So we just focused on independent sleep. So we
Mm-hmm.
put the baby to bed independently at 12 o'clock. Well, now we have almost no crying. Baby's having super long stretches. And then what we did, and this is my advice to everyone, is that we moved back so slowly. Think about how off our asses we are when we have time change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like in the spring, we have to go to bed an hour
Exactly.
earlier. It takes me a month to
Yeah.
recover because I'm losing sleep. I don't want to go to bed at the time that, like, my 10 o'clock is now 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, my
Mm-hmm.
body's like, we don't do this yet. So you
Right.
can lay in bed. Like it, and so it's awful. So do it slowly, 15 minutes at a time until you're not seeing any protests. When you don't see any protests, you're going to pull back again another 15 minutes. Okay. You're going to do
Yeah.
that ever so slowly. That's advice number one. That's where I would start. So then my second question, my part two question here is always, how is baby falling asleep? And this is what I don't know, because it's really this 7 month old. It might be like a later circadian rhythm. Oh, and sorry, before I continue on the second path, if your baby goes to bed late, let them sleep late so they get that
Mm-hmm.
amount of sleep overall. It just means that your whole day is shifted. Um, your youngest, I'm not using names perfect
It's
purposely. Is
fine.
that okay? Okay.
Yeah. Either way,
Um,
it's fine.
your youngest, it goes to bed late, but she sleeps in late. She
Yeah.
has a later circadian rhythm. Now, whether
Yep.
that was biological or that's just something that you kept up from birth that just sustained itself and now that is who she is, great. But I would definitely let your child sleep in so they're getting those hours of sleep. Now, a
Yep.
sign that your baby is actually an earlier circadian rhythm and you're keeping them up late is that you do keep them up late and they still get up early. If they're
Mm-hmm.
getting up early after a late bedtime, then you need to pull back. They're
Yep.
telling you something.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was our indication when we
Hmm.
first started to push her bedtime. I mean, obviously, once she became a toddler, right? Like when she was a
Hmm.
little baby, that it wasn't quite like this, but yeah, that she was a late sleeper. She can
Yeah.
sleep through the sun, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's still the case on the
Yeah.
weekends. Like I really think
Oh,
the only reason she gets up is just to come upstairs and get in
yeah.
bed with us, and she'll fall back asleep, which is insane. Like I can't believe that my 4-year-old comes up and just like
Right?
at 7 and can sleep another hour with us, you know.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so yeah, that just proves the point. Like, and my oldest, he would cry to go to, like, I think you said that he was the only child you've ever dealt with up to that point that asked to go to sleep.
Yes. I remember I came to babysit. This is pre me having kids. This is another like moment of not forgetting. Is I came to babysit and we're playing and playing, and he goes, "Auntie, I think it's time for bed."
Yeah, I'm ready to go to sleep. Yeah,
And I was like, "Oh, is it this easy?"
yeah,
And it was.
yeah, yeah. They love bedtime. But yeah, so and he wasn't that way. Like you could
Mhm.
let him, and he was wonderful at staying up. Like I always used to say, he's going to be a great time when we're going out. Or
Yeah.
when he's going out with his friends. I'm obviously not one. He's not
Yeah,
going
I
to
was
want to go
like,
out with his
"What are you
mom.
doing? We're not going."
No, I just remember, like, you know, if there's an event or something or a
Yeah,
late dinner, like he could rally, you
he
know.
could do it.
But
Hey, look, I could do it too in
yeah,
Vegas only.
right, right. When there's oxygen being pumped.
Literally,
Yeah,
oxygen in every light to confuse the hell out of my body.
right,
It's the
right,
only
yeah,
time I'm like, how's it 4 o'clock in the morning and I feel this good?
right. Yeah, no, it's incredible. Yeah, so that was just him. Like he
Mhm.
could rally, but he definitely never slept in the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
So then part two of this question for our friend is, okay, that's your late bedtime thing. That's where I would start. But I don't know if your child is waking because their bedtime is off or because you are assisting them to sleep. If they're being assisted to sleep, they're going to wake to get that assistance. Or when they do have a partial, I shouldn't say, they're not waking to have help back to sleep. They wake on their own naturally. And if they don't know how to go back to bed, they require that support. And that's what
Hmm.
I would say is going on. So then if we're saying like no matter what, they're still up at 1 and they get up early, I would the first things first is that independent sleep really does, I can't stress it enough. It solves so many problems. If your baby is up, like let's say you have this situation and your baby gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning. There's so many things going on for them. Number one, they don't know how to fall asleep. Number two, it's 5 a.m. So their melatonin is almost gone. Their cortisol and adrenaline has spiked to start the day. So you're doing all
Hmm.
these things. And it's like, how do I go back to bed when I don't know how to go back to bed? Do you know what I mean? Like all of these things
Yeah.
are happening. I don't know how to go back to bed, and my body is telling me to be awake. Everything makes sense. So if you really want to take care of 98% of your issues, that is where I would start. That is the starting point. Is a baby
Hmm.
falling asleep independently? If the answer is no, okay, we're going to attempt to give the baby the opportunity to do that, and we're going to keep baby bedtimes at the same time. um, there are also things, to your point, Lisa, you talked about that just worked for our family. I have a lot of clients who culturally, late bedtimes are just a part of what everyone is doing. And so
Yes.
I keep those. I don't ever tell those families to change unless there's a problem, unless that baby wakes up early. And then, even then, we might do something where we would bring along a pack and play and have the baby in the pack and play at the parent's location or like wherever the family is to make sure that they're able to participate in whatever, right? Because it comes down to, we have a client who is like, I want independent sleep, but I don't really want my baby to sleep elsewhere. I don't want to have to travel with the pack and play. So I don't know, like I want to flex my life, but I don't want to do these things. And then it's like, really, it's about the consequences for you and whether or not that's working for you, right? So, like,
Hmm.
if you
Hmm.
don't want to do those things, you might want to stay at home. If you don't want to stay at home, then you have to weigh the benefits and risks of staying home versus going out for you and your family. And, like,
Right.
really, in the end, it's up to you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, I hope that helps folks with some bedtime decisions and maybe taking the pressure off, that concept of early bedtime or defining it further or giving you some insights on what to do with that, like that information. And yeah, great.
Yeah. And I always want to give this disclaimer. All of my stories are looked upon with, with some, they're rose colored glasses, like for
They
sure,
have
like
a
not.
blurred effect.
Yes, there's, you do it and you forget it. So, whatever
So
stories they
true.
tell about these kids that are going to bed at 7 and waking up, whatever, there's been lots of tough nights and sicknesses and mornings. Like, all
Yeah.
of that is still, all
Yeah.
those things affect our kids and their sleep patterns, and of course, then us and the family
Yeah.
as a whole. So, all of this is just an overall picture. It's definitely
Yes.
not representative of every day and how easy it can be. It's not always easy.
A
So sleep
hundred and
is, yeah,
fifty
especially for
percent.
kids, right?
Yeah, and yes, that's such a great reminder that it can sound like everything's so easy, but it's like I do think that with time and age, you forget all of those hard nights. But it's normal to have those. This podcast is aimed to like normalize your situation and provide you solace that there's no textbook answer for anything. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's a really good disclaimer.
Yeah.
As always, folks, you can find more information about what we do, how we do it on babiesbestsleep.com. You can check out our blog. You can find us on Instagram at babiesbestsleep. Follow our adult sleep account at Rest My Best. We are really taking off there, honestly. It's okay to be a grown up and not know how to sleep yourself. I am just so floored about what we are seeing truly there. We're going to actually have an episode with one of our consultants, Amy, um, very soon. So, yes, Rest My Best at Baby's Best Sleep. What else do we have? Oh, on TikTok at Baby's Best Sleep. Um, yeah, I hope everyone sleeps well, and we'll see you next week.